For 3 years, I sent my parents $700 every single week, not because they asked nicely, not because I had extra money, but because they said they'd lose everything if I didn't help. Then one day, my mother texted me 6 words that changed everything. "Your child means nothing to us." I always thought family meant unconditional love. Growing up in our small Ohio town, my parents drilled that into me. "Family comes before everything," my mother would say while making dinner. My father would nod in agreement, his contractor hands rough from work. I believed them. I worked hard through school, got my accounting degree, married Daniel, my college sweetheart. We had our daughter Haley, who lit up rooms with her smile. Life felt perfect. Then came the phone call. "We need your help, honey. Things are tight right now," Dad said, his voice heavy with what I thought was embarrassment. Without hesitation, I agreed. "Whatever you need, Dad, I'll help." That's when it started. Every Monday morning, I'd transfer $700 to their account. Daniel questioned it at first. "That's a lot of money, Marissa. How long will this go on?" "Just until they get back on their feet," I promised. But weeks turned into months. Months into years. 3 years of $700 payments. Do the math, that's over $100,000. We canceled family vacations. Haley wore hand-me-downs instead of new clothes. Our savings account dwindled while I kept supporting my parents. The strangest part? They never said thank you, not once. Instead, something else happened. They started pulling away. Phone calls got shorter. Their voices grew colder. When they did visit, they'd inspect our home with critical eyes. "Still haven't fixed that cabinet door?" my mother would ask, knowing exactly why we couldn't afford home repairs. I ignored the signs, made excuses for them. "They're just stressed about money," I'd tell Daniel when he noticed their coldness. But deep down, I felt something changing. The parents who once told me family meant everything were treating me like I meant nothing, even while taking my money every week. I just didn't know how bad it would get, or that my innocent daughter would become their next target. If you've ever sacrificed everything for family only to be treated like you don't matter, hit subscribe. This story might help you realize you're not alone, and that sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones who should love us most. Comment below if you've ever felt invisible to the people who should see you clearly. Haley's 5th birthday arrived on a perfect spring Saturday. I'd spent weeks planning her party. Nothing extravagant, just a small backyard celebration with cake, balloons, and a few neighborhood friends. "Can Grandma and Grandpa come?" Haley asked while helping me hang streamers. Her eyes sparkled with hope. "Of course, sweetie. I already invited them." I had 3 times, actually. First with a handwritten invitation, then a text message. Finally, a phone call the week before. "Mom, you're coming to Haley's party, right? She keeps asking about you guys." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "We'll see, sweetheart," my mother replied flatly. "We've been busy." The morning of the party, Haley woke up early, bouncing with excitement. She wore her favorite purple dress and kept peeking out the window. "Are they here yet?" she asked every few minutes. "Not yet, honey. They'll be here soon." But as friends arrived and the party began, my parents' chairs remained empty. Haley kept glancing toward the gate, her smile fading a little more each time. During cake time, she saved 2 pieces. "These are for Grandma and Grandpa when they get here," she explained, carefully setting them aside. My heart cracked watching her. Children believe in people. They trust. They hope. By the time the last guest left, those 2 cake slices sat untouched. No call, no text, nothing. "Maybe they got lost?" Haley suggested, still in her party dress, sitting on the porch steps. "Maybe," I said, fighting back tears. That night, after tucking Haley in, I checked my phone one last time. Nothing from my parents. Not even a happy birthday message for their only grandchild. Daniel found me crying in the kitchen. They couldn't even call. I whispered. After everything we've done for them. Maybe something happened, he suggested. But nothing had happened. I learned that the next day when I called them, trying to sound calm despite my anger. "Oh, we just forgot," my mother said casually. "It's just a birthday. She'll have plenty more." Just a birthday. Just my daughter's happiness. Just another reminder that the $700 I sent them that week meant more than we did. I thought my parents were too busy for my daughter's birthday. Then I saw the Facebook photos posted that same day, my parents smiling at a restaurant with my brother's family. The caption read, "Family night, so blessed to have everyone together. Everyone except us." I stared at my phone screen, unable to breathe. There they were. My father Gerald, my mother Teresa, my brother Colton, his wife and their kids, all dressed up, laughing around a table filled with food. The timestamp showed 6:30 p.m., right when Haley was blowing out her candles, asking where her grandparents were. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through more photos, desserts, gifts being opened, my mother hugging my niece. The same mother who told me, "We just forgot," about her other grandchild's birthday. They hadn't forgotten. They had chosen. I called my father that night, my voice shaking. "Dad, I saw the pictures. You said you were busy." "Busy doing what? Pretending we don't exist." Silence stretched across the line. Then his voice came through, sharp and defensive. "You think money buys family? You've been acting like you're better than us ever since you started sending that $700. The accusation hit like a slap. "What? I was helping because you asked, because I love you." "We didn't need your charity," he snapped. "Colton never made us feel like that." I couldn't understand what I was hearing. For 3 years, I'd been sacrificing to help them. Now they were acting like I'd done something wrong. "You said you needed it to pay bills," I whispered. "And we did," he said, "but it doesn't mean you get to hold it over us." After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen, trying to make sense of his words. How had my help turned into something ugly? How had my sacrifice become an insult? That night, I showed Daniel the photos. "They lied to us," I said. "They chose Colton's family over ours." Daniel looked at the pictures, then at me. "Maybe it's time to stop sending them money," he suggested quietly. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. Despite everything, they were still my parents. I still believed they could change. I was wrong. A year passed. The weekly payments continued. I kept hoping things would improve, that my parents would realize how much their rejection hurt. When Haley's 6th birthday approached, Daniel noticed my hesitation about inviting them. "You don't have to," he said gently. "They're her grandparents," I replied. "Everyone deserves a second chance." So I called my mother, trying to sound casual. "Mom, we're having Haley's birthday at the park this Saturday. She'd love to see you." My mother sighed. "We'll think about it. Hope is a dangerous thing." I bought extra cake, saved 2 special seats, and told Haley her grandparents might come. I watched her face light up. "Really? They'll be at my party this time?" "They said they'll try," I answered carefully. Saturday arrived bright and beautiful. Haley wore a new dress, one I'd saved for months to buy. She kept watching the park entrance. "Are they here yet?" she asked every few minutes. "Not yet, sweetie." As the party progressed, I kept checking my phone. No calls, no texts, nothing. During present time, Haley opened each gift with a smile, but I could see her eyes darting to the park entrance between each one. When the last guest left, she sat on a swing, still in her party dress. "They forgot again, didn't they?" she asked, her voice small. I sat beside her, unsure what to say. How do you explain to a 6-year-old that her grandparents didn't forget? They just didn't care enough to come. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes," I said finally. Haley nodded, looking down at her shoes. "It's okay. Maybe next year." That night, after tucking her in, I checked my phone one last time. There was a message from my mother, sent an hour after the party ended. "Tell Haley happy birthday from us." No explanation, no apology, just 7 cold words that showed exactly how little effort they were willing to make. But what came next would break my heart completely. 2 days after Haley's birthday, my phone buzzed with a message from my mother. 6 words that shattered everything. "Your child means nothing to us." I read it 7 times before I could breathe again. I stood frozen in my kitchen, staring at my phone screen. The message continued. "Stop expecting us to play happy family. Gerald said it best. Your child means nothing to us." My hands trembled so badly I nearly dropped my phone. These were my parents, the people who raised me, who I'd been supporting for years. And they had just declared, in writing, that my 6-year-old daughter meant nothing to them. Daniel walked in and saw my face. "What happened?" he asked, rushing over. I couldn't speak. I just handed him my phone. His expression darkened as he read the message. "They said what?" His voice was quiet with shock. I sank into a chair, trying to process the cruelty. What kind of grandparents would say such a thing about an innocent child? What had Haley ever done except love them and wait for them to show up? "Maybe she didn't mean it," I whispered, still searching for excuses. "Maybe she was just angry." Daniel knelt beside me, taking my hands in his. "Marissa, listen to me. No one says something like that out of simple anger. This is who they are." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Haley's face as she waited for grandparents who never came. I kept reading that text over and over. The next morning, I found Haley playing with her dolls. She had named 2 of them Grandma and Grandpa. "They're coming to my doll's birthday party," she explained, arranging tiny plastic chairs. "They promised not to miss it this time." Something broke inside me watching her create the love she wasn't receiving. Children shouldn't have to pretend to be valued. For days, I barely ate or slept. I replayed every moment, every payment, every call, every time I had begged for affection that never came. I thought about the $700 I had sent just that Monday, money that came from our family budget, money that meant fewer new clothes for Haley, no family vacation, a delayed car repair. Money I had been sending to people who had just told me my child meant nothing to them. That's when I realized I had been paying for something I would never receive, love, and it was time to stop. After 3 years of sending $700 every week, I finally stopped. My father called exactly 37 minutes after the money didn't arrive, not to check if I was okay, not to ask about his granddaughter, just to demand his payment. Monday morning came. For the first time in 3 years, I didn't make the transfer. My finger hovered over the send button, then I put my phone down. "Are you sure?" Daniel asked, watching me. "I'm sure," I said, feeling both terrified and relieved. We both knew what would happen next. The question was just when. The answer, 37 minutes. That's how long it took for my father to notice the missing money. That's how long it took for my phone to ring with his name on the screen. I answered, my heart pounding. "Hey, your mom said the money hasn't come in this week. You forget?" His voice was casual, as if he were asking about the weather. I took a deep breath. "No, I didn't forget. I stopped sending it." There was a pause, then cold anger. "You ungrateful brat, after all we've done for you?" The words stung, but something had changed in me. The text about Haley had broken whatever spell I'd been under. "What have you done, Dad? You've taken everything. My money, my peace. And now you want to take my child's joy too? Watch your tone," he snapped. "You'll regret this." "I already regret the last 3 years," I said quietly. I regret giving you over $100,000 while you treated us like strangers. I regret letting Haley believe you cared. This isn't over, he threatened before hanging up. My hands were shaking, but for the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. I had finally stood up for myself, for my family. That night, Daniel and I sat down to look at our finances. Without the weekly $700 drain, we could start rebuilding our savings. We could finally plan a small vacation. Haley could join the dance class she'd been asking about. I should have done this sooner, I whispered. Daniel squeezed my hand. You did it when you were ready. That's what matters. If you've ever had to cut off someone who was draining you, financially, emotionally, or both, hit that subscribe button. This journey isn't over, and what my parents did next shocked even me. Comment boundaries if you've had to make the painful choice between your peace and someone else's demands. 2 weeks after I stopped sending money, my phone exploded with angry calls, not just from my parents, but from relatives I barely spoke to. How could you abandon your struggling parents? They demanded. That's when I realized my parents weren't just taking my money, they were taking my reputation too. The rumors spread like wildfire through our small town. According to my parents, I had abandoned them when they needed me most. They told everyone who would listen that I had cut them off without warning, leaving them unable to pay bills. They conveniently left out the 3 years of weekly payments, the missed birthdays, the text about my daughter. My cousin called first. Your mom's crying at church about how you won't help them anymore. What's going on with you? Then my aunt. Gerald says you've changed, gotten selfish with your money. Finally, my brother Colton called, his voice sharp with anger. Mom said you cut them off when they needed you most. What's wrong with you? I took a deep breath, deciding to stay calm. Colton, for 3 years I sent them $700 a week. Do the math. That's over $100,000. What did they do with it? Silence on the other end. And while I was helping them, I continued, they were eating out with you, buying new furniture, and telling my child she meant nothing. They wouldn't say that, he argued, but his voice had lost its certainty. I have the text, Colton. I can send it to you right now. He hung up. A week later, I received an actual letter from my father. Not an email or text, a handwritten letter, as if to make it more dramatic. It read, You've turned into a stranger. You think you can live without us, but one day you'll regret it. We're your parents. We deserve respect. I read it twice, then tore it up. Respect, I realized, is earned, not demanded, and certainly not purchased at $700 a week. The hardest part wasn't the rumors or the angry calls. It was explaining to Haley why people were upset with Mommy. How do you tell a 6-year-old that her grandparents were using her mother for money? Sometimes grown-ups disagree, I told her simply, but it doesn't change how much I love you. She nodded, accepting this in the way children do, trusting that the adults will figure things out. If only it were that simple. Your parents weren't struggling when they asked you for money, the message read. They were paying off Colton's gambling debts. Just like that, 3 years of sacrifice made sense, and none of it had anything to do with helping my parents. The message arrived on a Tuesday morning from a woman named Deborah. According to her profile, she had worked for my father's contracting company years ago. I know this is odd, her message began, but I thought you should know. Your parents weren't struggling when they asked you for money. They were paying off Colton's gambling debts. My stomach dropped as I read further. Your brother lost nearly $90,000 betting on sports and playing poker. Your father told people his daughter was rich enough to cover it. I thought you should know the truth. I stared at my screen, unable to process what I was reading. Could this be true? Had I been sending money not to save my parents from financial ruin, but to bail out my brother's gambling addiction? Are you sure? I typed back with shaking fingers. Deborah replied within seconds. Positive. I handled some of the accounting before I left. Your father made no secret of it among his friends. He even bragged about how you never questioned where the money was going. The room seemed to spin around me. All those times my parents had claimed they needed help with bills, with the mortgage, with medical expenses, had it all been lies? I called Daniel at work, my voice breaking as I explained what I'd learned. I need to know if it's true, I said. I need to confront them. Are you sure that's safe? He asked, concern in his voice. Maybe we should think this through. But I couldn't wait. 3 years of my life, of my family's life, had been built around a lie. We had sacrificed so Colton could keep gambling. I thought about Haley wearing hand-me-downs, while my brother apparently lost thousands at poker tables. I thought about canceling our family vacation while my parents covered his debts with my money. I thought about that text. Your child means nothing to us. And suddenly, everything made horrible sense. I wasn't family to them. I was an ATM, a resource to be used and discarded. That night, I made a decision. It was time to confront them face to face with what I knew. It was time for the truth. 2 weeks after I stopped sending money, my phone exploded with angry calls, not just from my parents, but from relatives I barely spoke to. How could you abandon your struggling parents? They demanded. That's when I realized my parents weren't just taking my money. They were taking my reputation too. The rumors spread like wildfire through our small town. According to my parents, I had abandoned them when they needed me most. They told everyone who would listen that I had cut them off without warning, leaving them unable to pay bills. They conveniently left out the 3 years of weekly payments, the missed birthdays, the text about my daughter. My cousin called first. Your mom's crying at church about how you won't help them anymore. What's going on with you? Then my aunt. Gerald says you've changed, gotten selfish with your money. Finally, my brother Colton called, his voice sharp with anger. Mom said you cut them off when they needed you most. What's wrong with you? I took a deep breath, deciding to stay calm. Colton, for 3 years I sent them $700 a week. Do the math. That's over $100,000. What did they do with it? Silence on the other end. And while I was helping them, I continued, they were eating out with you, buying new furniture, and telling my child she meant nothing. They wouldn't say that, he argued, but his voice had lost its certainty. I have the text, Colton. I can send it to you right now. He hung up. A week later, I received an actual letter from my father. Not an email or text, a handwritten letter as if to make it more dramatic. It read, You've turned into a stranger. You think you can live without us, but one day you'll regret it. We're your parents. We deserve respect. I read it twice, then tore it up. Respect, I realized, is earned, not demanded, and certainly not purchased at $700 a week. The hardest part wasn't the rumors or the angry calls. It was explaining to Haley why people were upset with Mommy. How do you tell a 6-year-old that her grandparents were using her mother for money? Sometimes grown-ups disagree, I told her simply, but it doesn't change how much I love you. She nodded, accepting this in the way children do, trusting that the adults will figure things out, if only it were that simple. Your parents weren't struggling when they asked you for money, the message read. They were paying off Colton's gambling debts. Just like that, 3 years of sacrifice made sense, and none of it had anything to do with helping my parents. The message arrived on a Tuesday morning from a woman named Deborah. According to her profile, she had worked for my father's contracting company years ago. I know this is odd, her message began, but I thought you should know. Your parents weren't struggling when they asked you for money. They were paying off Colton's gambling debts. My stomach dropped as I read further. Your brother lost nearly $90,000 betting on sports and playing poker. Your father told people his daughter was rich enough to cover it. I thought you should know the truth. I stared at my screen, unable to process what I was reading. Could this be true? Had I been sending money not to save my parents from financial ruin, but to bail out my brother's gambling addiction? Are you sure? I typed back with shaking fingers. Deborah replied within seconds. Positive. I handled some of the accounting before I left. Your father made no secret of it among his friends. He even bragged about how you never questioned where the money was going. The room seemed to spin around me. All those times my parents had claimed they needed help with bills, with the mortgage, with medical expenses. Had it all been lies? I called Daniel at work, my voice breaking as I explained what I'd learned. I need to know if it's true, I said. I need to confront them. Are you sure that's safe? He asked, concern in his voice. Maybe we should think this through. But I couldn't wait. 3 years of my life, of my family's life, had been built around a lie. We had sacrificed so Colton could keep gambling. I thought about Haley wearing hand-me-downs, while my brother apparently lost thousands at poker tables. I thought about canceling our family vacation while my parents covered his debts with my money. I thought about that text. Your child means nothing to us. And suddenly, everything made horrible sense. I wasn't family to them. I was an ATM, a resource to be used and discarded. That night I made a decision. It was time to confront them face to face with what I knew. It was time for the truth. Your father did the same thing to me 30 years ago, my Aunt Virginia said over coffee. He borrowed money for an emergency, then used it to buy a boat. When I asked for repayment, he told the family I was greedy. Sound familiar? That's when I realized my parents' behavior wasn't new. It was a pattern. The call from Aunt Virginia came out of the blue. My father's older sister had always kept her distance from family drama, living 3 states away and rarely attending gatherings. I heard what happened, she said. Can we meet? We arranged to meet at a small cafe halfway between our towns. I was nervous. Was this another ambush from a family member defending my parents? But when Virginia hugged me, I felt something I hadn't experienced from family in years. Genuine warmth. I've been watching this happen from a distance, she said once we sat down. I should have warned you years ago. She stirred her coffee slowly. Your father did the same thing to me 30 years ago. Borrowed money for an emergency, then used it to buy a boat. When I asked for repayment, he told the family I was greedy. Sound familiar? I nearly dropped my cup. That's exactly what he's doing to me. Virginia nodded. Gerald has always been this way. Your grandfather was the same. Charming when he needed something, cruel when he didn't get his way. For the next hour, she shared stories that made my situation seem like history repeating itself. How my father had manipulated relatives for money. How he'd play favorites among family members. How he'd cut people off when they stopped being useful. What about my mother? I asked. Virginia sighed. Teresa enables him. Always has. She benefits from his schemes while keeping her hands clean. Why didn't anyone tell me? Would you have believed us? She asked gently. You adored your parents. We all saw how hard you tried to please them. She was right. I wouldn't have believed anyone who criticized them, not until I experienced their cruelty firsthand. Before we parted, Virginia hugged me again. You're not alone anymore, Marissa. Some of us know the truth. Driving home, I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. Sad to learn my parents' behavior was a lifelong pattern, but relieved to know their rejection wasn't my fault. For the first time, I understood. I hadn't lost my parents recently. I'd never really had them. We didn't mean what we said. Your father was angry. Please forgive us, my mother wrote in her letter. I almost believed her, until I read the last line. We're short on money again. Could you send something this month? Some people never change. They just find new ways to hide who they really are. The letter arrived 6 months after our confrontation. A cream-colored envelope with my mother's neat handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. "Dearest Marissa," it began. Already I was suspicious. She had never called me dearest before. "These past months have been difficult for your father and me. We miss you and Haley terribly. The house feels empty without your visits." I read on, noting how she described their misunderstanding and how they never meant to hurt me. The letter painted them as confused, well-meaning parents who had simply expressed themselves poorly. "We didn't mean what we said about Haley," she wrote. "Your father was angry. Please forgive us. Family should stick together through hard times." For a moment, my heart softened. Maybe they had reflected on their behavior. Maybe they genuinely regretted their actions. Then I turned the page and read the final paragraph. "We're short on money again. The heating bill was higher than expected this winter. Could you send something this month? Even $500 would help. We're family, after all." I sat back, the letter falling from my hands. Nothing had changed. Not really. The same manipulation, just wrapped in prettier packaging. Daniel found me staring at the wall. "What's wrong?" he asked. I handed him the letter. He read it quickly, his expression hardening at the end. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. I nodded, surprising myself with how calm I felt. "I am, actually. 6 months ago, this would have devastated me. Now it just confirms what I already knew." I took the letter, placed it back in its envelope, sealed it shut, and dropped it in the trash. Some doors, once closed, should remain that way, not because of anger, but because of peace. My peace was worth more than their approval. "Your daughter abandoned us when we needed her most," my father announced to the entire family reunion. 30 relatives turned to stare at me. That's when I opened my banking app and passed my phone around the table. Here's what abandonment looks like. $119,200 in transfers to my parents, while they told my daughter she meant nothing. I hadn't planned to attend the annual family reunion. After everything that happened, the last thing I wanted was to face a crowd of relatives who'd heard only my parents' version of events. But Aunt Virginia convinced me. "If you don't go, their story becomes the only story," she said. "Sometimes silence protects the wrong people." So there I was, sitting at a picnic table with potato salad I barely touched, watching my parents work the crowd. They moved from group to group, accepting sympathy, playing the role of victims perfectly. I kept to myself until my father stood up to make his usual toast. He thanked everyone for coming, made a few jokes, then his voice changed. "Not everyone understands the meaning of family," he said, his eyes finding me in the crowd. "Your daughter abandoned us when we needed her most." The silence that followed was deafening. 30 relatives turned to stare at me, their expressions ranging from confusion to judgment. I could have walked away. Part of me wanted to. Instead, I stood up. "Would you like to tell them why I stopped sending money, Dad, or should I?" He glared at me. "There's nothing to explain. You got selfish." I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and walked around the table, showing everyone the long list of transfers. Here's what abandonment looks like. $109,200 in transfers to my parents, while they told my daughter she meant nothing. Gasps rippled through the group. My mother stepped forward. "Marissa, this isn't the place." "Where is the place, Mom? You've been telling everyone I abandoned you. You never mentioned the 3 years I supported you. You never mentioned the text about my daughter." I pulled up the message and read it aloud. "Stop expecting us to play happy family. Gerald said it best. Your child means nothing to us." My cousin Lauren's hand flew to her mouth. "They said that about Haley?" My father's face reddened. "She's twisting things." "Am I?" I turned to the group. "Ask them what they did with the money. Ask them about Colton's gambling debts." My brother's head snapped up. "What are you talking about?" The reunion dissolved into chaos after that. Some relatives left immediately, Others stayed to ask questions. My parents stormed off, claiming I was causing a scene. But for the first time, the truth was out. And truth, once spoken, can't be unheard. They used your money to pay off my gambling debts? Colton asked, his face pale with shock. I thought Dad loaned me that money. I've been paying him back for years. That's when we both realized we weren't enemies. We were both victims of the same manipulation. 2 weeks after the reunion, Colton called and asked to meet. We hadn't spoken properly in years. He'd always been our parents' favorite, and I'd always been the outsider. We met at a diner halfway between our homes. He looked terrible, dark circles under his eyes, hair uncombed. "Is it true?" he asked before I even sat down. "About the gambling debts?" I nodded slowly. "That's what I was told. They used my money to cover your losses." He ran his hands through his hair. "I thought Dad loaned me that money. I've been paying him back for years." I stared at him. "What?" 3 years ago, I got in trouble with gambling. Lost about $90,000. Dad said he'd help, but that I'd have to pay him back with interest. I've been giving him $500 every month since then. The realization hit us both at the same time. Our parents hadn't just taken my money, they'd been collecting from both of us. "So they got $700 from me every week, plus $500 from you every month," I said slowly. "For the same debt." Colton looked sick. "They've made over $200,000 from us combined." We sat in stunned silence, processing the depth of the deception. "I'm sorry," he finally said, "for not believing you, for the things I said." "You didn't know," I replied. "They made sure we were always against each other." He nodded. "They still do that. Whenever I visit, they talk about how selfish you are, how you think you're better than everyone. And they probably tell me the same things about you when they call." "Except you stopped taking their calls," he said with a hint of admiration. We talked for hours that day, comparing notes, filling in gaps in each other's understanding. For the first time since childhood, we weren't competitors for our parents' approval. We were allies against their manipulation. "What do we do now?" he asked as we prepared to leave. "We tell the truth," I said, "and we protect each other." 1 year later, my phone rang. "Marissa, it's your father. We need $5,000 for emergency medical bills." My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I simply said, "No." That's when I realized my revenge wasn't in hurting them. It was in finally being free of their power over me. It's strange how time changes things. A year after cutting off my parents, our lives had transformed. Haley was thriving in school and dance. Daniel and I had saved enough for a down payment on a better house. We'd even taken our first real family vacation to the beach. The weekly anxiety of Monday morning transfers was gone. The constant guilt trips had stopped. The emotional roller coaster had finally come to a halt. Then my father called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Marissa, it's your father," he said, his voice carrying that familiar tone of urgency. "We need $5,000 for emergency medical bills. Your mother needs surgery." A year earlier, those words would have sent me into a panic. I would have transferred the money immediately, canceled our plans, and worried myself sick about their health. Instead, I felt calm. "No," I said simply. "What do you mean, no?" he demanded. "She's your mother, and I'm your daughter. Haley is your granddaughter, but that didn't matter when you needed money before." "This is different. This is an emergency." "Every time was an emergency, Dad, and every time—" The emergency was a lie. I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end. "You'll regret this," he said finally. "When she's gone, you'll wish you'd helped." "Maybe," I admitted. "But I've spent enough of my life regretting the things I did for you. I won't regret the things I didn't do anymore." After hanging up, I waited for the guilt to come, the doubt, the fear. It never did. Instead, I felt peace. That evening, I watched Haley practice her dance routine in our living room. Daniel recorded her on his phone, both of us cheering as she twirled. "Again, Mommy, watch me again," she laughed. And I did. Without checking my phone, without worrying about my parents, without feeling like I should be doing something else, helping someone else, earning love that would never come. My revenge wasn't in hurting them. It wasn't in exposing them to the family or cutting off their money supply. My revenge was in building a life where their approval no longer mattered, where love wasn't something you paid for, it was something you gave freely. Where family meant people who showed up, not people who shared your blood. If this story resonated with you, hit subscribe right now. Sometimes the strongest act of revenge isn't getting even, it's getting free. Drop a comment with the word freedom if you've ever had to walk away from someone toxic to find your peace. Your story matters, and this channel is where we honor the courage it takes to choose yourself when others won't.